Come, my time-travelling friends, and let's go on an adventure together.
Welcome back, my time-travelling friends, to this, the fourth location on our virtual tour of Tudor London. During our last adventure in time, we explored the ancient priory of St Bartholomew the Great, and today we have walked little more than half a mile northeast of the priory precinct to visit another great religious institution of Tudor London, perhaps one of the most famous of them all, the Charterhouse. To reach the Charterhouse, we must make our way across Charterhouse Yard, which in your time, I believe, is called Charterhouse Square. But here today, the wealthy and titled of Tudor London jostle for space. Amongst its most famous residents are Catherine Parr and her husband, Lord Latimer. They live in a fine mansion. In your time, it is occupied by a building called Number 10 Charterhouse Square. Then there's Catherine's brother, William Parr, later first Marquess of Northampton. He is also resident, as is John Leyland, the topographer and the King's antiquary. He lives in a tenement adjoining Lord Latimer's mansion. The French and Venetian ambassadors had houses in the square too. Back in 1533, Jean de Danteville, who appears in Holbein's Ambassadors, lived there, as did his successor Charles Solier, who was also painted by Holbein. On the north side of the square, a building of substance dominates. During the early Tudor period, before the dissolution of the monasteries, this was the Charterhouse, one of only 9 Carthusian monasteries in England, and by far the most prestigious. Did you know that there was an enormous cachet associated with becoming one of its brethren, and many a man has given up other ambitions to be there, even as a lay brother? Although the Carthusian order was renowned for demanding that its monks live a life of solitude, simplicity and silence, do not be taken in. The monastery relies on the patronage of wealthy and powerful individuals, and there are records that monks lived a very comfortable life. But more on this in a moment. But why is the Charterhouse Yard so popular? Well, for one thing, it is within easy reach of the city, while a journey along Fleet Street and the Strand brings you to King Street, in your day known as Whitehall, and the epicentre of court life in London, the Palace of Whitehall. Standing no more than half a mile to the north of the city walls and out of the press of the city, the Charterhouse and Charterhouse Yard was known for its good, clean air. And so, this place was a convenient location for the aspiring courtier, but also a pleasant spot away from the pestilence and the bustle of the city. Entering the yard from Charterhouse Lane, the Carthusian priory lies ahead of you to the north of the square, while a medieval chapel and churchyard and stone cross are to your right. These were sited on the centre of a green and marked the fact that during the reign of Edward I in 1349, the yard had been a burial place for a substantial number of victims of the Black Death. And it was this cemetery that gave grounds for the setting up of a religious institution to the north of the burial ground. The building, which was to become the Charterhouse, was finally completed around 1420, and thanks to the generous patronage by the 1430s, had secured something that many inhabitants of medieval London could only dream of: running water, piped directly from high ground over Clerkenwell. But the monastery reached its zenith in the first 30 years of the 16th century under Prior William Tinby. It consisted of a particularly vast great cloister, which measured 340 by 300 feet, and around which all the key buildings of the priory were arranged, including the priory church, the Charterhouse, the freighter, as well as the individual cells accommodating each monk. Whilst the order prized simplicity, solitude and silence, as I mentioned, the monks, as you can clearly see, enjoyed clean, orderly living, with running water to each cell. Now, each cell covered 25 square feet and comprised of 3 or 4 rooms built over 2 floors. As you can see here, the kind of rooms you might expect to see inside include an entrance lobby, a prayer room, a sleeping room, and a living room.